Alright, so it's been a while since I made a video, and it's especially been a while since I made a video on any form of alarm related thing. So I think it's about time I go over another one of these security panels in my collection. This is an Omegalarm, well, Radionics Omegalarm 4000/8000. This is a very early Radionics alarm system. So here's the keypad I have with it. It's not quite the right keypad for this system, and I'll get to that in a second. But here's what it looks like. Digits 0 through 9, and 2 star buttons at the bottom. This cabinet has an Omegalarm by Radionics symbol here. No lock installed. This tape residue I didn't clean off yet. And then there's a window here, which I'll get to. Take a look at the inside. Here's the control board. So this is a very simple panel, and it's a very early Radionics system. I can't seem to find anything earlier than this panel, except maybe the Radionics 3012. I say maybe because I believe the panels that had 12 at the end of their model number came after this system, but really hard to find any history or anything on this, so kind of hard to tell. So the top left, we have our transformer input, our bell output, and auxiliary power output. Now this system, as you see there, it's listed 6 volt DC. This is a completely 6 volt alarm system, which is different than most of my others. And then we have a connection for a phone line. So this panel does have a communicator built into it, and I will be demonstrating that. At the bottom, we have 8 zone inputs. So these are 1K end-of-line supervised zones. There's 8 of them, so this is the Model 8000. The Model 4000 only had 4 zones. There's a buzzer in the bottom right. Now I do have it disconnected. You can see this little white wire here, which is usually connected to that pad labeled WH. So I have it disconnected because when you're programming the system, if there's any memory in the panel that is not correct, or like there's any error in the programming, it just sounds the buzzer continuously. And when I was originally getting this thing working, that was really annoying, so I desoldered it. But it doesn't really matter because this buzzer does the exact same thing as the buzzer in the keypad. So for the purposes of this demonstration, anytime the keypad is buzzing, this buzzer on the panel would also be buzzing. On the right side, we have, at the very top, there's a terminal labeled Disable Restart, and that's 31. So whenever you connect that to ground, that basically resets the processor in the panel. And then we have a bunch of terminals for the keypad. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of wires on this keypad compared to the typically 4 or 3 on newer digital systems. Then we have a perimeter arming station and master arming station input. Those are for momentary key switches. So this panel is from the era where key switch controlled alarm systems were very common. And you would replace older key switch alarm panels with these digital systems every once in a while. So they always had, I mean, this one and my Scantronic panel and a few other systems I have a dedicated key switch input. So you could wire your existing key switch between terminal 26 for ground and 23 for the master arming station, for example. And whenever you momentarily turn the key switch to the on position and then back off, that toggles the arm state of the system. So if you have it on the master arming station terminal, that will toggle between master armed and disarmed. And in the middle, we have a pre-warn buzzer terminal. So that's 24, and that's for, it basically follows the same state as this buzzer and the one in the keypad. If you wanted an external sounder to indicate that the entry delay is active and that you need to disarm the system, you could connect it there. So that's all the terminals on the board. Now, as for this keypad is an Omegalarm Model 152. If you look on the top of the board here, it says it's meant for a Model 150. So this isn't quite the right keypad for it. This is actually meant for the Omegalarm 4012/8012, which is a super similar system to this one. And I do have some of those boards. I just need to repair them and get at least one into working order before I can make a video on it. So this keypad's newer than the panel. This keypad does have a date, which is 1981. So I suspect this panel is 1981 or older. Now, of course, again, there's no date in the manual. There's no date on the PCB for this. So kind of hard to tell an exact time frame for this system, but it's one of 2 of my maybe earliest panels I have. But that's the keypad I'm using with it. It works almost perfectly. The only problems are, first of all, the armed LED is on dim at all times, so it should be off right now, but it's dim. And then the ready LED right there. That is usually, it would light the ready LED to indicate that all your zones are normal and you can arm the system, or it would be off to indicate that there's something is open somewhere or some zone has a trouble, so you can't arm the panel. This system does not support that at all. So it does indicate when you cannot arm the system, and I will show that by buzzing the buzzer in the keypad momentarily when you try to arm it. So for this demonstration, just ignore the ready LED. The armed LED, when it's dim like that, should be off. There's 2 star keys at the bottom. The one on the left by itself doesn't do anything, as you can see. The one on the right, when you press that, it sets the system into a perimeter armed state. And then to disarm, you just enter your code. To master arm, you just enter your code when it's disarmed. So for perimeter arming, you do not need a code. For master arming, you do need a code. Now, the other one here, so if you push both of these star keys at the same time, it shorts this wire that I have connected to zone 8 to ground. That was meant for a panic alarm input. So I have zone 8 programmed as a 24-hour zone, so it's armed at all times, and it reports a silent panic alarm. It does not activate the bell output. So if you press star and pound on the keypad, that is just a silent panic alarm. I have zone 1 connected here, and that one is just programmed as a perimeter zone with a delay. So just like a front door. So I'll be demonstrating that with this resistor over here and these alligator clip leads. So I'm going to go over most of the system operation, and then I need to make one programming change because of a quirk with this panel, and then I'll demonstrate it going into alarm. Now, in regards to the communicator, close this. This system is reporting to the Omegalarm 6000 digital receiver right here. This is the piece of equipment that would sit at your monitoring center, and it receives alarms from alarm systems on phone lines. So it has 4 line cards in there. So this panel is connected to my phone system, so is the receiver. The panel will call the receiver whenever it needs to send a report to it, just like it would in a regular monitoring center. So this Omegalarm receiver, it's worth mentioning, this is the first receiver to support a lot of different things. So originally, these alarm systems, if we look at down here, I have an Ademco model 660 alarm receiver. Super early alarm receiver, if not the very first one to support 3+1 pulse reporting. So I'm not going to go into detail on alarm reporting formats and how it all worked. I could go on and on about that for a long time. But what you need to know is the Ademco 660 and older receivers of the same era did not support sending a zone number with a trouble, or a user number with a closing report, or a zone number with a restoral. A restoral is indicating that a zone has went back to normal after an alarm or a trouble. A trouble is, of course, the zone is in an open circuit or there's something else wrong with it. So this was the first receiver to implement expanded 3+1 reporting and hex digit reporting. So it's worth mentioning that. This was also the first receiver to support BFSK format, which is newer and this panel does not actually implement. And this was the first receiver to implement the 40 pulses a second pulse reporting speed. So I will be using the best of the best format for the era with this receiver and this panel. So I'm not sure if this is the first panel to support any of those reporting format features, because of course I don't even know if this is the first, I don't know if Radionics made any other panels before this. Hard to tell, but this is the first receiver that supports those features, and it's the appropriate one for this panel. So that's configured. I should probably enable the printer. The displays are visible, it's just a little bit dim, so I'll just show all the reports it sends on the printer instead. We have this system sensor remote alarm LED thing. It's meant for a duct smoke detector on a commercial fire system. I'm just using it on the bell output, so whenever this red LED is on, the alarm bell would be ringing. So let's go over almost all the operation of the system. So first thing first is, if you have a zone, remember this is on zone 1, it's programmed for trouble on open and alarm condition or fault on short. So if I short this zone, that is basically just like opening the door. So no ready LED to know if your system can be armed or not. So how you know is if you start entering your code and you cannot, there's a zone faulted somewhere, the keypad will buzz at you. Just like that. So if I disconnect this and I press a 1, well, now it didn't buzz at me, so the system's ready. So that's how it indicated whether there was a problem or not. Now, I mentioned this window at the top. So there is a edge connector. If you were to look at the PCB, it's right there behind that metal piece. So that connector is used for 2 purposes. One is the programmer, which I'll show in a minute. And the other was there was a status display board, which you could get for this panel. I don't have one. I've been looking. If I ever find one, I'll probably get it and then make a video on that. But that board had 8 LEDs on it. and they would shine through this window here to indicate the status of each of the 8 zones. So that was the only way, and there was a label you could put on the front of this panel that like pointed to each one and labeled what zone number it was. That status display board was the only way to tell which zones were in a fault state at the time. Well, apart from not being able to arm your system because the zone is open. But to tell which specific zone, you would look at the status display board. Now to perimeter arm it, you just have to press this button. So if I do that, now you'll see the armed LED is changed to a much brighter state, and now it's perimeter armed. It does not send a closing report. So a closing report is the report to the central station when you arm your system. You can remember it by when you close your business at the end of the day, you arm the system, and when you open your business in the morning, you disarm the system. So no closing report for perimeter arming. However, it will send closing and opening reports for master arming, which I will be demonstrating. So to disarm, we'll just enter our code. Now the armed LED goes back out, and we're disarmed. So I'm going to show a trouble report now. So these zones, it has a 1K end-of-line resistor at the end, so the panel measures the resistance of the zone to tell if it's open, normal, which is the state it's in right now, or shorted. I have this one programmed so that a short indicates the door is being opened or whatever sensor is off normal. An open condition would be a trouble. So if somebody cut the wire to this, or if there was just a wiring problem in it, just in general, and there was an open circuit, that would indicate a trouble. So as soon as I disconnect this, you're going to hear the panel click and start rotary dialing the receiver. This panel does not support touchtone dialing at all. Then, again, I'm not going to go super in-depth into reporting formats and how they work, but I'll let you hear it reporting to the receiver, and I'll show you the printout of the trouble report. So I'll disconnect this. And there it is, rotary dialing, as you can hear by the read relay. So the reporting format that it's using to talk to this receiver with, which if we see here, account 123, trouble, zone 1. The reporting format that it's using to talk to the receiver is 3+1 extended, and it's using 40 pulses a second, so that's the fastest format this receiver supports, and it uses the checksum digit. So it's very similar to rotary telephone dialing, and I can actually, I'll change the format before I demonstrate the last alarm on this so that you can hear that a little bit better. But it's pretty much just like rotary telephone dialing, but instead of disconnecting loop current, it's sending a 1800 hertz tone to the receiver. And the receiver uses that higher pitched 2300 hertz tone to handshake with the panel, and once it sends a report and the receiver accepts it, it sends that tone again to tell the panel that it got it. So as we saw, it reported trouble zone 1. And then for a restoral report, when I reconnect this jumper, now the zone's back in a normal state, it's going to dial the receiver again, and it's going to send a restoral for zone 1. And again, if you're using an older receiver at the time, before this one existed, you wouldn't get that additional zone number information. You would just get account 123 trouble and account 123 restoral, if that, because not every panel even sent trouble reports at the time. There, now we have restoral on zone 1. So that's how that works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to arm the system, and then I'm going to activate the zone, and then I'm going to disarm it in time. And then we'll see it sends its reports for that. So we'll enter our code, and we'll see the armed LED starts flashing. That will stop once it's done reporting to the receiver, so I'll let you watch that. Of course, I have my exit delay set for 10 seconds. So there it just clicked, it picked up the phone line. There. Now we got account 123 closing report. So the system has been armed. Kind of hard to read that with it being reflective. So if you notice, the LED stopped flashing now, and when it was reporting to this receiver, the cadence of the flashing got all messed up. Super common in these older panels. It's like that in this panel, it's like that in the 6112 and the 4112 and the 8112 panels. Super, super common with these older systems. I guess just the microprocessors couldn't perfectly multitask between communicating with the receiver and flashing that LED and doing all the rest of the operation. So it slows down a little bit, but overall, you can still enter a passcode and all that when it's doing it and it'll respond. So that's the arming report. And what I'll do is I will momentarily open this, short this zone, and the buzzer in the keypad will go off, and I will disarm it in time before the exit delay expires, and I'll explain why in a second. So there we have it. Enter my code, and the armed LED went out, and no alarm output, so we disarmed it in time. I have the delay set for 10 seconds, both for entry and exit. There we have it, account 123 opening report. Now, why I'm not going to show you it going into alarm yet is a quirk with this panel. And I don't know if it's something I'm doing wrong with the programming, but I very much suspect it's a hardware problem with this board. So there's been a few weird behaviors with this system, but I mean, that's to be expected. It's super old, and I haven't replaced any of the capacitors on the board yet, so that could be part of it. But whenever the pre-warn option is enabled, so it sounds the buzzer during the entry delay, as long as that is enabled, when the entry delay expires, it resets the panel and it doesn't send its alarm report. So I'm going to disable that in programming before I show it going into an alarm condition. So speaking of programming, here is the Omegalarm 5000 programmer. This is the other thing that can connect to that edge connector at the top of the board. And this is what you use to change all the parameters of the panel. So what I'm going to do, how this works is it sits perfectly in between the two terminal blocks here, and it slides down onto that edge connector. Then you take this lever and you put it into the lock position. You press select to turn the programmer on, and now you can jump to any programming option or just press enter to go to the next one. The programming on this panel is super simple. I'm not going to go super in depth into it. If you've ever programmed a 6112 or 8112 panel, it's super similar. Here's what the different zone codes look like. They're only 3 digits. And then here are the other options. So what I'll do is I'll just go through everyone that's in there real quick. First option is the alarm reporting format that it's going to use. 55 is set for the 40 pulses a second, the special format that this alarm receiver, the Omegalarm receiver, supported. So what I'll do is I will clear this and I'll change it to 2 so that you can hear how it sounds like rotary dialing a little bit better. 2 is a Demco standard, and that's a lot slower and easier to understand. This is the phone number prefix, so if you had an area code or a PBX access code you needed to enter, you would put that in there. Here's the phone number, so it dials the phone number right after the prefix. In this case, it's dialing 884-3111 to reach this receiver. Next is the account number, 123. Let's change that for the fun of it. Let's make it 222. Enter to save it. Here's where you set the report codes that it sends for a trouble report and a restore report. So F and E are what those are set for. And then this last digit, if it's blank, it does not use expanded reporting. If it's set to an E, it does use expanded reporting. So that means sending the zone number along with a trouble or restore. Next, we have the report code for an opening report, which is set to B, and for a closing report, which is set to C. Those are all the reporting codes I'm programmed into this are standardized for this receiver. But if you were reporting to another central station that had a different setup, you could customize those report codes. Here's where you set the entry and exit delay times, so both set to 10 seconds at the moment. Next is the pre-warn feature, so I need to disable this so that it doesn't have that weird issue where it resets, so I'll just clear that. So if I disable that, all that does is it disables sounding the buzzer during the entry delay, but for whatever reason, probably just needs capacitors replaced on this board. That messes up the operation of the panel when that is enabled. Here's the bell timeout. So a lot of systems of the era would just sound the bell continuously when they go into alarm until you disarm it. This one, you can set a timeout. So I have it set for 2 minutes. So after 2 minutes of ringing the bell continuously, it will automatically turn it off. Next is the listen-in time. Now, this panel, if you ever noticed, this receiver has a speaker on the left side. This panel does support audio verification, so listen-in is what it was called initially. This seems to be one of the first systems to integrate that. I can't say it is the first because I don't know, but it's one of the earliest receivers I've seen that actually has the listen-in support, and this is one of the earliest panels I've seen that actually has the support to send it. It does require an additional module, which I unfortunately do not have, so I will not be demonstrating that feature. But how it worked is after sending an alarm report to the central station, the panel would stay on the line, the receiver would connect the speaker to the phone line, and the panel would connect a microphone to the phone line on its end. And then the central station operator could listen in on the premise and see if there's anything going on. So this option sets the duration. You set it from 2 through 9 minutes, and that's just how long the panel stays online after sending its alarm. Next option, so the first field here, that one, which it's kind of hard to see what that character is, but it's an A. If you put a B after it, which I did, that means it'll blink the alarm on the armed LED on the keypad here when it's in an alarm state. So I do have that enabled. If you leave that part blank, that disables it. The P option, it says to always put an 8 after it. I have not tried any other digits there. The L option, it says to always leave it blank. So I've not tried anything else there. I do plan to go through and try all the combinations and see if it does anything different for any of those. If I find anything interesting, I will put it in the description. Next is the account number. It sets, no, that's not the account number. That's a combination. That is the code you use to arm and disarm the system. You can only have one code in this panel. There is no concept of multiple users. So in this case, you just set one passcode right here. It's set for 1, 2, 3, 4, and it can be anywhere from 1 to 8 digits long. This last part, the first one, the CE field, is set to 10. That is the combination timeout. So once you start entering a passcode at the keypad, it starts counting down, starting at whatever value you set there in seconds. And you must enter the entire combination within that time period. So if I took longer than 10 seconds after pressing like 1 and I waited 10 seconds, it would reset and it would clear that buffer. So I'd have to press 1 again. And then the last option, the DL option, it's blank right now because I don't have the listen-in module, but if you do have the listen-in module, you can program a B in that field, and it will tell the panel to silence the bell once it goes into listen-in mode. So if you want to be able to use listen-in and you have a really loud alarm bell, you're not going to be able to hear anything useful at that point. So if you put a B there, the panel will turn off the bell once it goes into listen-in mode. That's what that's for. Next, we have zone programming. So we have loop 1 through 8. So I'll just demonstrate loop 1. The first digit is a 7, so that means it's going to report a trouble condition if the circuit is open, and it's a controlled point, so that means that it's armed at all times. The middle digit is a 6, which means it is armed during perimeter arm. And that includes, so if you had zones for like foil break on windows, or your front door or anything, you would want that armed no matter if it's perimeter arm or master arm. So you program those as perimeter zones. But if you had an interior door or a pressure sensor or something, you could program that for master arming. So you'd use the first section, 1 through 4. And with it being a 6, that means that it's going to provide a delay on a short. So if you could share these zones between multiple different types of sensors if you wanted. So say you had a foil break sensor on the zone, and when that would activate, it would open the circuit. And you also had a door on that zone, and when the door would open, it would short the circuit. So you only want a delay on your door, so you would program it for a delay on short, and if it received an open when it was armed, it would instant alarm. If it received a short when it was armed, it would delay. So that's what that's for. And the last one being a 7, these are just miscellaneous options. So with 7 being in the bottom section, that enables restore all reports, and 7 means bell on alarm. So those other ones, no bell/buzz means it's going to be a completely silent alarm activation. That's what this panic zone is programmed for, which I will demonstrate as well. And then buzz on fault is similar to chime on a lot of systems. However, it's a little bit different. So when you have buzz on fault programmed, that disables the bell output for that zone. However, when the system is disarmed, if you were to short the zone or open the zone, it buzzes the buzzer on the keypad and the panel and the pre-warn buzzer output. So if you had like a vault door or something that you wanted to know immediately when it was opened, no matter what, even if your business was open, you would program that zone for buzz on fault, and that buzzes the keypad as soon as that zone goes into a trouble or an activation state. And then the last ones are bell on alarm. So if you just set it to 7, that's just a regular behavior where when the zone goes into alarm, it activates the bell. And 8 is the same as 7, except instead of a steady bell output, it does a pulsed bell output. So that could be used for smoke detectors or any form of other fire detection, so that you would know a pulsed bell is a fire alarm and a continuous bell output is a burglary alarm. So that's all that. I'm going to show the test feature of this real quick. So if you press test, which once I enter this menu, I don't know if it's normal behavior or not, but as soon as I enter that menu, the buzzer on this keypad will slowly get louder. So what this menu is for is it's used to just show the status of every zone on the system on the display here. It's actually described a little bit right there. So if I press test, we show dashes for zones 1 through 8. There's the buzzer. So all zones are normal at the moment. If I were to open zone 1, now we'll see an O in the ones position. And then if I hold the 2 star buttons on the keypad, you'll see it shorts that zone 8 when I do that. So if I put this back to normal, and we look at that, now they're all dashes again. So that's just a useful feature so that you can see the exact status of every single one of the zones if you're troubleshooting the system. Now that I'm done programming it and I've went over the programmer, once you're done, you hold the enter key, you press test, and once it goes blank like that, you can remove the programmer. So that just cleanly disconnects it in a way, so it doesn't corrupt any of the configuration you just did. So we'll set this lever back down, and I'm going to try to push this up. And you'll notice whenever you are done programming the system, it always starts in the armed state. So I'm going to go ahead and disarm it, and wait for this to finish reporting. Alright, sorry for the cut there, got interrupted, almost got this done in one take. So as you could hear, that is a Demco low-speed format, which we programmed the panel for. So that sends, it did 2 different things. One, it sent each pulse for only 50 milliseconds now, instead of 40 pulses a second being 12.5 milliseconds on and off time. This format uses 50 milliseconds on and off time, so it's a lot easier to hear what's going on. And it sounds just like rotary dialing, except instead of interrupting the loop current, it's sending a 1800 Hz tone to the receiver. So that's a little bit easier to hear how the reporting format works. And then the other thing it did different is it sent only 4 digits, and it sent it twice in a row. So that is 3+1 without the checksum verification, otherwise known as double round format. So, as we can see, we have account 222 as we change the account number, restore all zone 9, and opening report. Restore all zone 9 is the battery status, and then opening report is because I disarmed it. So all we need to do now is demonstrate the panic alarm and demonstrate an actual alarm condition. So I've disabled the pre-warn. So what I'll do now is I'll arm the panel, and I will wait. Just going to rotary dial the receiver again. As you can hear, that is a much slower reporting format. If I had left it at 40 pulses a second, it would have been done by now. And you can really see the delay in the blinking when it does this. So we've reported our closing report. So we're now armed. Now what I'll do is we will not get a buzz at the keypad when I do this because I disabled the pre-warn feature, but if I do this, should be in an entry delay state now. It's hard to tell without the buzzer being enabled. There we go. So now we see that flashing armed LED because I programmed the B in that programming field that is set for blink the light whenever there's an alarm condition. And we see that the alarm bell output is now on. So this is going to very slowly report an alarm for zone 1. So if you listen, you might be able to hear that it's sending 2, 2, 2, and then 1. So the first 3 are the account number, and then the last one is the zone that went into alarm, and it was zone 1, so just one pulse. Now it's sending the restore report for that zone because I did release this afterward. Alright, so now we have alarm report for zone 1 and a restore report for zone 1. Now if this panel did have the listen-in module installed and configured and all that, instead of hanging up, this would have connected the speaker. Well, I mean the speaker's already connected to the line because I have it selected so you can listen to it, but if the speaker was on another line, like line 2, it would have moved it to line 1 and the panel would have connected a microphone to the line and you could listen in on the premise. So we will go ahead and just enter our code to reset this. Turns off the bell output, resets the system. Now it's going to report the opening report. And then once this is done, I will show the silent panic alarm. Of course, I moved the speaker to the second line, so you can see the light flashing, so it is sending reports, but it's silent. But I will move that back. So now we have account 222 opening report. So system's disarmed. Now for the silent panic, this won't give any indication at the keypad or the bell output, so I'll just press these two. Oh, I said it won't give any indication, but I accidentally let go of them out of order, so I accidentally perimeter armed it. Disarm that. But now it is reporting that silent panic alarm. So I guess that's the one problem with the way the panic works on this, is if you do what I just did and you accidentally let go of the left one first, it'll see that as you pressing the right one to perimeter arm it. So that's a little interesting. But now we are sending that alarm zone 8 and it just hung up. No restore report because we programmed the zone for no restore reports. If I did program it for restorals, it would restore as soon as I let go. So there's really no point in that. But there we are, alarm zone 8, because that's the one that the keypad is wired to there. So I think that's about it for this panel. I don't think there's really any other features I can demonstrate. The only other thing I know this can do is it can do force arming, where even if a zone is currently in trouble or you left a window open or something, you can still forcefully arm the system. But I have not gotten that to work reliably, and I don't know if I'm doing it incorrectly or if there's just another weird operational problem with this board. But overall, it works. At least it works 95% of the way, and I'm quite happy with it. So yeah, that's the Omegalarm 4000/8000.